Hey there and welcome. My name is Tina. This is the Alignment Keys. And today we are going to take a deep dive into the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. I'm so excited to bring this through today, right? On the cusp of a New Year's Eve, starting a new year. We're going to talk about the man in the mirror. And we're going to go into a deep dive here, like I said, bring through some great information from Michael now that he's on the other side and some messages that he wanted to bring through. We're going to walk through his soul contract and show you some insights into his life as well through that modality that I always talk about. And so let's just give you the little lowdown here of Mr. Michael Jackson, the King of Pop. Michael Jackson was a master singer, songwriter, dancer, and philanthropist. He was regarded as one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century. He is one of the best-selling artists of all time with an estimated 400 million records worldwide. He had a record 13 number one singles, more than any other male, and was the first artist to have a top 10 single in 5 different decades. He is regarded as the highest selling individual music artist of all time worldwide. I believe he even holds a record for the sales of an artist post life. So he's continuing to expand, and we'll get into why that is in his soul contract in just a moment. He broke so many records that I wouldn't even have time to go through all of them in this video. It would be way too long. And he comes through with this wonderful, soft energy, just like he sounded when he would speak to the public. Very just open, this open canvas type energy comes through with, again, very inviting and very warm. So who was Michael really? So in this video, we're going to take a look at who he was through a soul contract, as I mentioned, and we're going to open the door into seeing him from humanity's perspective versus the superstar that most everyone saw, the image that he portrayed in his life. Please understand these videos, this channeling is not about putting anyone on a pedestal or about condemning anyone. We want to bring through their humanity as shown through the soul contract, both the positive energies they were pulling in and the negative energies that were showing up in their charts. I do these videos and channelings because it's an opportunity to help others better understand themselves and to bring forward their messages they hope will help guide others on their journey. So if you're drawn to this video, there is something in it for you. I also plan to bring forward in this particular video some additional information regarding the soul contract that I haven't brought in any of other my videos. So again, Michael's is the first, as he was in many other things, for this new endeavor. Please stay tuned to the end because I will bring forward more information on the names and how the energies play out, and that will be at the end of the video. So please share, like, and subscribe. And once we are done with the reading, feel free to let me know what was your favorite number that really showcased who Michael was. I would really love to hear from you. So I am going to now share my screen and pull up his chart. And here is the gorgeous Michael Jackson. The picture, I like this kind of black and white picture of him, his song Black and White. And again, we're bringing forward this information on New Year's Eve, although these videos are pretty timeless. If you're drawn to one, like I said, it could be there's a message in it for you. So Please, if it resonates with you, take it as it's a message for you. That's why these videos and these celebrities want to come through, is they're trying to help and guide us on our journey here. I like this picture too. Just Michael at a time before the plastic surgery and things were morphing out of control for him. So again, our soul contract is based on our birth name. This is Michael Joseph Jackson on his birth chart. I don't like to go into all of the detail in every one of my videos, so I always put a short introductory video in the description box if you're curious about the history of the soul contract, how I put the diagrams together. But in our charts, we have these two interlocking triangles, a Star of David. One is our physical side of our chart. Let me quickly annotate my mouse so you can see where I am with it. And here we go. Again, as I was saying, we have the two interlocking triangles. One points to our physical side because we're spiritual beings having a physical experience in human form, but we also have a spiritual side that we came to work on as well, because our incarnations are all about our ascension process, learning and growing as a soul at a deep soul level. And so we come with these, what we call challenges or karma. You'll see that in some of my videos where it'll say actually the karma. We like to use challenges because people get a little hung up on the word karma. It's not about a punishment. These are actually challenges that you chose before you came here to be part of your growth. And they can show up as negative energies, but it's about you being able to overcome them. And so then you're given great qualities. You choose some qualities that you want to experience, or talents. I like to refer to them. And of course, Michael Jackson had some great talents that were quite obvious. And being he's this dominant 7 here, right? You can see that was played out in both sides of his chart, the physical and the spiritual side. And then, of course, we have what we call what drives us, what gets us out of bed. I like to refer to these physical and spiritual drives as goals. And then we have our ultimate destiny, soul purpose, life purpose, and what we overall came here to learn and grow from in our life. And so that is the short and dirty of our soul contract. And so now I want to get into the numbers and the energies that we're pulling forward for Michael. I want to first talk about his challenges. He had this 11-2 and his physical challenges. I always start out usually with the physical side because that is most active for us. And then we work into our spiritual side, and then the numbers towards later in life. And it can happen at different times for different people, depending on how quick they work through their challenges. And then that activates your qualities, your talents, and then it pushes you to accomplish your goals or your drives, and then eventually to fulfill your life purpose. So again, Michael had this challenging 11-2 energy. And so this meant that Michael incarnated here as this empty vessel. So the veil for Michael was a little bit heavier with this 11-2 as his karma, because again, it was meant for him he didn't have anything to draw off of, not a lot to draw off of from past lives in this aspect. It was about him learning to develop a new structure of truth, setting new boundaries, learning new things here. So again, it actually made him a little bit more cloud for his incarnation, because again, it's the 11-2 is tied to structure, and it's all about you building the structure as you go through your life. And it kind of starts out slowly and then it builds up over your lifetime. So it's about building this for him, this body of knowledge, his own truth through his music and that type of thing. But for him, it was also about the importance of boundaries. These numbers can manifest very similarly for us, and then they can come in with a little bit different connotations depending on the supporting numbers around around the numbers and our soul family, like our parents and people who we incarnate with to help us. We help each other in our growth process. So this number would challenge Michael with feeling very much like an outsider, lost and alone. And he did express this quite heavily in many interviews that I watched, just very much felt very an outsider, picked on, bullied, that type of thing. Always people taking pot shots at him. And he carried that very deeply. It hurt. He was very sensitive. The two in this side of the numbers makes you very sensitive and to criticism and things like that. The 11 is Venus energy, and it's tied to love and the feminine, right? Venus is feminine energy. And that kind of explains why he was so drawn to developing close relationships with women such as Princess Diana, who had 11 twos in her chart, Diana Ross, who was very pivotal when he was part of the Jackson Five before he came out on his own in their success. In fact, she was the one who saw them in Gary, Indiana, where he grew up, and saw them perform, and then brought them out to be introduced to some Motown executives. So Diana Ross was very pivotal. And so Elizabeth Taylor, Brooke Shields, these were some people that he was drawn to establish some sort of connection. And that was tied to that Venus energy. He would struggle with his emotions here. Then we end up self-medicating. This can be a lot of mood imbalances plus energy imbalances. So he had trouble sleeping. And so then again, a lot of people who have this number, they aren't drawn to meditation and other healthy modalities. They'll be drawn to more of a quick fix, which is a cultural thing that Michael, again, was from that era where medication, the magic pill, that type of thing was still prevalent, and we're becoming more aware of the importance of meditation, taking care of the body, exercise. Obviously, he did a lot of that with his dancing, but not letting the mind control you. So learning how you can control the mind, how to relax, how to take your power back, so to speak. And it's funny that the 2 is very much about cycles, and it's tied to the moon. And I think of, he developed the moonwalk and how that kind of ties into this moon energy. The moon is also tied to secrets. It was also him inhibiting his sense of self. And we'll get into more details as to why that was. So as he was working through these numbers, he was able to draw people in because he had this sense of safety. And I felt it through just channeling his energy. Like I said, it's very soft, a very safe, protective type of energy. And that is also part of this 2 energy. It comforts you. It's a spring. So it is about soft place to land, so to speak. So we're going to, as we go through each of the numbers of his chart, he wanted me to make sure that I stop and pull a card on each of the numbers. So with the 11-2, we're going to pull an oracle card for each of these numbers, get his message through. And so with the 11-2, he wants to bring through miracles. And this is a beautiful card with rainbows. And like I said, he has this wonderful soft energy, this Venus energy. And being that this is in his challenging side of his chart, he would be definitely challenged with these energies very often because it's about him coming into the positive form. And I love this where there's this mountain, this rigid force, obstacle, and then this beautiful rainbow in the rigidity of that. But miracles, he had this great ability to believe in miracles. This is this open channel, and he retained this very youthful, exuberant energy about himself. This became very much part of building the structure of wanting to be the child. That's the way I looked at it. He didn't want to grow up and see the world through a grown-up eyes. He wanted to maintain that innocence, which was taken away from him at such a young age that he never did get to take on. But how we can make miracles happen in our lives. And it's funny that on the bottom of the deck, I'm seeing the transformation of the butterfly, and we have the rose. So he was all about this transformational energy, transforming himself. And he's, again, reaching out to understand that he could create miracles in his life where people didn't believe. And he had these high expectations of selling the most records, and he believed in that. His brothers would tell him, "Oh, you're dreaming, that's never going to happen," but he just didn't have that wall up. Like I said, he came here with this open container, and he was just like, "It can happen to me." He wants us to start the new year believing in miracles, keeping that youthful exuberance about our lives and our childhood. And so he was given this great talents, very dominant number here. So we're going to talk about that with him. This sevens, I think Prince was one of the other ones that I did that was a dominant seven. And we're going to talk about that. And it's all about healing the heart. And so he had these great talents, which this is Gemini energy. And it is all about giving him the ability to exude this great presence and become very magnetic because of it. And it's about being able to bring people together through his work. This number was responsible for him being able to catalyze people into action for a common cause, like the undertaking of the We Are the World, to help bring people together, unite them through a common cause, and then catalyze people into making change in the world. He had this great ability to manage people, facilitate groups, and it made him very adaptable and versatile in his life and his business. And so he had this great ability to instill change through his heart, opening up his heart to others. But the negative side would be his desire to control others. And this was a safety mechanism instilled from his very, very abusive childhood. The sevens can bring in hiding who you really are. And so then he was building the walls around him, exuding a lot of control and manipulation, which the sevens can be. They want to be seen, but be seen behind the persona, behind the image. And so when he was really going through this difficult time, when there was the accusations of child molestation were occurring, sevens can isolate and they can run away and hide. And so he ran away to Bahrain for 11 months and just got away from it. And that is very typical for somebody with sevens that would do that. They would sell. He took his family with him, his children, but they go somewhere where they're not known. And I said this would be something he could do because he has these sevens in his chart, and it makes him want to hide his inner self. And so that sevens can at a very deep level feel like there's something bad about themselves. And so that was him, again, hiding his true self. I don't think anyone ever knew the real Michael. When you have this many sevens in your charts and you were raised under the conditions that he was raised with, the trauma that he was, the duress that he was under as a child, and forced to work for his supper and everyone else's, which is all tied to his worthiness. The sevens were here for him to really try to open up to himself and to accept and acknowledge that dark side of himself and work on and heal those subconscious compulsions that were driven from the 10-1. And so again, the sevens made him very magnetic. Even when you watch the Jackson 5, you can barely take your eyes off of Michael. He just draws you in with this energy. And we are going to pull another card, as I said. And so this is from the Keepers of the Light. And so this is really Michael. This is the divine director, right? Look at that image. Even the way he is dressed reminds me of Michael. It's intervention and purpose. Divine intervention is occurring. Know that you are being guided, and happiness is your purpose. So he wants to remind us that happiness is at the core of anybody's life purpose, finding joy in your life. That is the best gift you can give anyone, because when you are exuding happiness and joy, that changes the energies in the ethers and the world. Because we're all connected, it affects those around us. So he was definitely, there were some things that he was lacking from an intervention standpoint, where he didn't intervene in his own self. We can only blame others so much. We do have to take responsibility. He takes responsibility for everything that he created in his life, good, bad, or otherwise. We are never alone. There's always people guiding you and helping you along the way if you are willing to listen and to watch for the signs. So he's saying how important that is as well. The 11-2 energy can be cloudiness and not seeing the world as it really is. Sevens can be in dreamland and not wanting to see what is really going on either within yourself or others. And so then that can really cloud your judgment and shut off that communication that is there for everyone. That was part of his challenge. It was part of what he came here to overcome. That's a wonderful card to pull, reminding us all about our divine purpose. All of us have that, and happiness is no matter what we ever accomplish in our life, happiness has to be, and joy has to be at the top of the list. So let's talk about what was driving Michael and the goals. This is a very spiritual number. This is the 10-1, and the 10 is tied to the Virgo energy, which is the sign that Michael was born under. It's a very spiritual number and a physical goal. So this is very much about Michael being a service soul. It's where he gets his humanitarian and philanthropy push from. Michael is well known for serving many causes, and it's estimated that he has donated somewhere around 500 million, which again is going to be tied to this 5 in his spiritual drives as well, because that's connect as a spiritual number and physical, it's connecting him to his spiritual goals and drives as well. And that was just an estimate here of the various projects he worked throughout his life. This number is tied to being very hardworking and having this very hard work ethic, which we know he did. He didn't become a master by sitting, laying on the couch and dreaming it. He worked very hard, and to the point of exhaustion at times, ignoring his body's need for rest. Again, that choose foolishness to wisdom, clouding his judgment, and the body is tied to that number 8. And his other challenging aspect here of his spiritual side, and also is tied to his overall life purpose, which is about him trying to come into balance. The 10-1 is also tied to balance in a different way. The 12-3 in his life purpose, we'll get to shortly, is really about his balance with his overall life. The 10-1 is about balancing the masculine and feminine within, which then creates a balance in your life. So this is about the disempowerment from the masculine. When we get out of balance with that masculine, to talk about it in a lot of these charts, because our culture is very patriarchal. It is all about this domineering, forceful energy, which takes over and everything. And then that creates an imbalance. And we have a masculine and feminine side. And when it creates an imbalance with that feminine side, that can really throw a person out of balance. And so his father was very abusive to Michael and to the other children in the family. I watched a video where he was talking about that, and his dad was extremely narcissistic. And if you know anything about narcissism, you don't have to watch him talk very long to understand just how toxic he was as a father. He didn't even let the children call him dad. He was called Joseph, and he was very abusive physically and verbally. Michael was very young when he started in the family business, this dad managing your kids, and again creates this deep worthiness issue because there is not unconditional love going on here. You are about providing for your family and not done in a way that is honoring and respectful, because we all want to contribute to our families. We all want to be supportive, but this was done in a very toxic way, very much manipulation by his dad for gain on his, for avarice and greed on his side of things. And unfortunately, this caused some very deep compulsive behavior that was instilled because of this abuse. And the first we'll talk about was this constantly undergoing a change in his physical appearance, especially his nose. And one time, one of the reporters that was interviewing Joe, the dad, Joseph, they said that Michael had said in his interview that he was so afraid of his dad that he would actually physically get ill. And the most disturbing thing that I remember about that was his dad smiling and saying he could regurgitate all the way to the bank. That was good for him. I made him what he is. He so basically took credit for what Michael was doing, and that's what a narcissist does. Everything is about them, and distorted Michael's image of himself, which he spent his whole life trying to fix through this plastic surgery, which is very painful. So this is again taking on that very toxic, abusive, to where you abuse yourself because that was so ingrained in him. That pain became a part of who he was. What we do when we have this trauma and we don't know how to get rid of it is we recreate it in our lives over and over again. So again, this was him physically trying to, even with the help of the sevens, hiding behind a persona, creating who he thought he should look like, all in an attempt to make himself feel better on the inside by trying to fix something on the outside. And we know that doesn't work very well. And he's saying it didn't work very well. And he wants to come through and say that it's okay to make improvements to the body or do things if you have built that self-love, because it will never work. You'll keep going back for more and more if you don't do your inner work. And that's why he's here, is to help encourage us to keep doing our inner work here. And so I do also want to bring in the 10 ones can, on the negative side of that number, tend to stay very superficial in relationships. It's tied to the left hand. And there were times when he remembered the glove on his left hand, because again, that's all about staying superficial, not letting people know who he really is. That's symbolic. You know, he also wore it on his right hand, and we'll talk about that in a little bit from one of the other numbers. But both of his marriage didn't last long due to the fact that he had real troubles with intimacy and feeling safe around people, being able to open up and be truly authentic. And that's brought in too from some of the energy of that seven and hiding his true self, so that they marry for other reasons. And that's very much part of the 10-1, superficial, manipulative, at a very unconscious level. I don't get the sense from Michael that he didn't realize that, because a lot of the 10-1s is very much this unconscious compulsions to do things or manipulate people. And he would not want to do that. That wasn't really who he was at a deep level. I keep struggling with my throat because he struggled with expressing who he really was, and that's coming through. When he married Elvis's daughter, that was more based on status rather than love. And then when he married Debbie Rowe, it was more tied to the fact that he wanted children. And that was his way to manifest that in his life. If you can look at it from his perspective, he was always used for someone else's gain. And so he unconsciously, and 11 twos, this is also tied back to that physical challenge. 11 twos will take on very dysfunctional patterns of others. And this was a dysfunctional pattern that he had taken on from his father. This is all tied together. We're going to pull another card. Going to the Oracle of the Fairy deck. So he did have some that softer, light, lovely energy that the fairies bring. Okay, and so here one jumped out and it says, go outside. The importance of it's time to go outside, tune into the powerful peace of nature wherever you are and feel at one with your habitat. He's talking about how we are tied to the earth and nature. And he didn't get to do that as a child. Again, he was only 5 years old. I think 4 or 5 when he started singing, he was 5. We'll get that to that number in his chart. But think of that, how impressionable we are at that age. And they were working harder than anybody should have to work as such a young child. They were doing like 200 shows a year. And when they would go home, sometimes they would stay in hotel rooms because they didn't want the kids to get too comfortable at home. I can't even imagine this. This is tragic beyond tragic. We cannot say that he did not suffer. This is not normal. He was not allowed to go outside and play. So he wants to know how important that is now to go outside, be with nature. This is where the best ideas come from. This is about enjoying life. And he did get out a lot when he got older, and he did learn the value of how peaceful it was, about connecting to the true essence of who he was. He did know who he was at a very deep level. And it, again, was definitely not who his parents were trying to make him be. So let's talk about the other challenging side to his chart and what that was all about for him. So we know from the physical side of his chart, 11 twos, he was to build his own structure of truth, his own business. He was to come out on his own and be his own person. And the 7s were to help him work with groups and bring people together. And then the 10-1 is all about service and giving back to humanity and the philanthropy. And that was that positive. That was what he came here to do. On the spiritual side of his chart, it's a little different. So this was about his expression in society and how he chose to express himself, and about becoming a master. The 17-8 is about him coming into mastery. He was a master at his craft. There's no doubt about that. But it was also about not being subservient to anybody, especially his father. Not being subservient to the media, to the image. Again, it was about letting go of all of that. And so he was able to come into this mastery with the Thriller album. It was released on December 10th, 12/10. You can see the 12 in his life purpose and the 10 in his physical goals in the year 1983. And that adds up to the 3, which 3 is all about mastery as well. It was the 7th single on the album. He was 25. So you see the 2s and the 5s in his chart, and that adds up to the 7 in his chart. This was all very much who he was. This was a culmination of mastery at only the age of 25. So when he attended the 26th Grammy nominations. That adds up to the 8 here in his chart. He received 8 Grammys. Thriller received 7 Grammys and 8 American Music Awards. Because this number's so on the karmic side, again, Thriller was exploring the symbolism through the dark side of human nature and the demons. So we're going to talk about that. He wanted me to bring out the symbolism in this video. The video starts with this young couple. Michael was in it with this lady driving along in a car. The car breaks down. They get out and walk. She's wearing pink and blue, signifying the balance between the masculine and feminine. And he's wearing red with a gold letter M on his, again, symbolism. Red is, all about the root chakra, and it's about fear and your basic instincts, right? About survival and what you have to do to survive, right? Something he definitely had to go through. So he asked this girl to be his girlfriend, and he puts a gold ring on her. And it's really weird because he puts it on her middle finger in the video, I believe. And the middle finger is also tied to this energy of power and anger. And red is also tied to anger, because that's a very basic instinct, is anger. And it's also tied to sexuality as well. And gold represents a higher level of consciousness. So it's about overcoming the basic human aspects of those instincts. So then he turns into a werewolf. And the symbolism behind that is the werewolf represents the moral decay of a person and turning into a werewolf. How we manage our those raw, basic urges and desires and compulsions. Definitely from the 10 here. So that struggle between right and wrong, good and evil, that's also tied in with the 8, the polarity. So he's really showing us about oscillating between these positive and negative sides. That was what I was getting from him through this compilation of the Thriller video, which was his highest selling record. For really open to seeing the symbolism. I may have to do a video just on some of that in his music, because he has so much music that he did from the age of 5. It's just incredible. But the positive energies were about getting him to express his creativity and be this very sensitive and imaginative and protective being that he really was. He also gets his love from animals from this number as well. The negative thing that comes from this number is being able to rationalize away your own behavior, whether it be bad behavior, and no matter how destructive it is to you or others, and not listening to his body, because the 8s are all about taking care of the body and honoring your body as a vessel. And so those were some of those challenges that he was undergoing, because that's what he came here to learn from. He came with the 1 energy of the 7s. I won't go more into that. We are going to pick a card for that aspect of the 7, 8, and this one definitely came out right immediately away, and it's called Trust the Niggle. What is the niggling feeling trying to tell you? This is where he said he would rationalize away what he knew at a deep sense, whether he was doing something right or wrong. We tend to rationalize or justify it away instead of trusting what it's trying to tell us and listen to it. And so he was saying he, at times, of course, being the human that he was, failed that in some respects. And so he wants you to trust the niggle and what those feelings are trying to tell you, and to act upon them and honor them. Don't hide them and stuff them away. The great 7s gave him that healing. He had a lot of abuse, and so it was about healing from that, learning how to heal from that in this lifetime. He's saying we're healing all the time. He didn't work through it at a deeper spiritual level. That was something that the niggle was trying to tell him, to go a little bit deeper there. And of course, he can see that now the veil's off. He sees everything he did, everything that happened, and how he gained such great wisdom from all of that and great love for everybody doing this human experience. He says it is quite challenging. And the eights often can get very depressed. And so he did. He could, having fives and a two, which is very hypersensitive. And we're going to get into the five right now, which also adds another level of sensitivity to him. And eights are very high frequency. They also feel like they don't belong here, and they don't feel like they want to just go home, which to them, home is not here on this God-forsaken planet. He developed this very Neverland feeling. So he had to create his own Neverland. And he was stuck in this kind of Peter Pan syndrome because of his trauma at such a young age, never really growing up in some aspects, which really helped him to manifest greatly, keeping that magic and those things, which he wants us to get back to. But again, still being that responsible person, adult, where we can do our inner work and take responsibility for our actions and things like that. So he said he was a little stunted in that area. So the fives are representing, Michael started singing at 5 years old. When you have a five in your spiritual drives, your goals, you are a teacher who teach the teachers. You teach at a soul level. You inspire others who are already great to be even better. Fives can take something and just take it to the next level. So he was at his own level, as we all know. He took things to such a high level and was so superior in this way. This number was just unbelievable for him. And so he got like I said, take an initial idea, make it better. So he really liked Charlie Chaplin and the mimes. And that was where he developed a lot of this ability to be able to convey emotion through his movement. And fives are also about truth and speaking your truth. And this was very distorted for him due to his traumatic upbringing. But then the movement came in. And so he could mimic and mime and convey emotion deeply, as we could see in his videos. And that's why, again, like I was saying, he was taking this general idea and just exploding it into the ether. Fives can make you very psychic, whether you acknowledge it or not. This would make Michael very much in tune with knowing that he could make something happen at a very deep level without really truly understanding, because fives is about intangibles and the unseen. And it's the vibrations of the sound is what we create from. And so he was a master creator. Through his singing and sound and the words, he was able to show us how to create the magic of that. Our thoughts are very important, but not to over-identify with them, because our egos can get away with us. Not all thoughts that come into our mind are really from us. They can be from other people's. Michael's being very psychic, because fives are very connected to others. And so they can take on others very negative energy. Fives can manifest abuse in their life because of taking on that negative energies. And fives can also be very reckless on the negative side of that number, what we would consider negative energies. And with that karmic 2, where it clouds your judgment, and then the karmic challenging 8, which is about learning how to take care of the body. Again, this is where he's ingesting, hurting himself through not only these surgeries, but hiring a doctor to basically give him propofol, which an anesthesiologist would give you to make you sleep. That's very disturbing, that whole thing. This is about the ego getting away from you and his trying to over control everything coming from those 7s as well. He ended up dying at the age of 50. Again, it's definitely tied to his 5s here. And so we want to mention that his last tour, when we talk about psychic and watching the symbolism, was called This Is It. That was the tour he was going to go on, and he was going to do 50 shows. And of course, he died at the age of 50. So we are going to pull a card on that. He's dragging me to the Shapeshifters Oracle. So let's see what this is all about for. Again, this comes back to feeling like stranger from another world. Okay, so it says strange companions in stranger places. Challenges, use your imagination. The number on this card is 28. The 2 and the 8 in this karmic challenges. Can't make this stuff up. And that adds up to the unconscious compulsions of the 10. So very interesting because he's got mushrooms on the one side and apples on the other. We've got the raccoon, which is known for wearing a mask, right? He's got the mask. And again, it's about taking off that mask and showing who you really are. And wow, this is a very symbolic here of very interesting, this card, because we're going to get to that stranger companions and we talk about his soul destiny. And the 12 is so associated in his life purpose, or soul destiny, as I just called it, is 12 is associated with expansion. And by looking at Michael's chart, when you have a 12-3 in your chart, you'll have other numbers that help you tamper down the expansion. He did not have that. That's why he just expanded, and he's still expanding even after he has crossed over to the other side. He had 39, which adds up to 12, Guinness World Records in music and humanitarianism. He was responsible for also encouraging many others to give, also through that teaching the teachers of the 5 and the master teacher in the 3 here in this 12-3 energy. Like I said, this number was unopposed in his chart, so he just keep expanding. But it also brought through 12s bring through this great love. It's just this great, wonderful being able to love, share your great love with others, to see beauty in everyone and everything, something he was very known for. This ability, as we talked about, this magical, to be awed, like a child is awed at everything. And people talk about how he had this just a magical ability, this great love of everything being like the first time for him, this childlike wonder about how everything is so amazing. But the 12s are all about learning that balance. Remember, 10-1s are about the balance between the masculine and feminine. And this is all about learning balance between the emotional, spiritual, and sexual expression in your life. The 3s are tied to self-worth. I've brought this up before. So you can either have complete poverty on the outside or be totally wealthy, but struggling with that inner wealth, which is loving and caring for the self, not indulging the self. He wants to make that very clear. We can be very self-indulgent. He's got that in his challenges with the 11s, can be very self-indulgent. And so he's saying not to be self-indulgent in the things that we think are good for us, but really aren't. And I mean by overindulging in, for me, it's chocolate, and learning how to truly take care of yourself, loving yourself, eating so you feel good, getting enough rest, which is something he struggled with very much, which was part of this reason for him medicating himself. He developed those issues of self-worth from his upbringing, his father. His self-worth was all based about what he could make, right? About how much money he could, how successful he would be. For somebody who made an astronomical amount of money, he died with a great deal of debt. I think it was 500 million he gave away to charities. 5s, if they have a very low self-worth, they have trouble hanging on to money. Even though he was a great manifester of it, he had trouble hanging on to it. So he would overspend, threes need to really learn self-worth, being able to hang on to money, but still be giving, still be sharing. That's important in these lifetimes. So he had huge debt, and that was like 500 million. Another five came out in the readings, and that was something he wanted to talk about. The threes, he was very shy, he was very introverted. This is a canal. Threes want to hide themselves. They don't want to be front and center. And that's why they usually start out in a group. The Jackson Five, of course, right? Five being tied to his spiritual drives and his inventiveness and his pioneer energies as well. And that was until he learned the confidence. And pretty soon, threes are all tied to being a leader. And he was a leader, and he was doing that at a very young age. When you would see him, he was always the one who spoke because he had a knack for that. And so that was something he was meant to do, was to become this great leader. And because this number is tied to expansion, sometimes a person can manifest emotional or physical issues to stop the expansion because they need to work through some things. And so he did manifest vitiligo, which is the skin condition, and it causes patches on the body to turn white. This is what it said in my messages from the body that ties to this card we just pulled, because this is about someone who manifests vitiligo. And my book, Messages from the Body by Dr. Lincoln, it talks about how we manifest the physical illnesses and things tied to our emotional body. And so in his case, this was somebody who felt out of place. The eights and their challenges, they're high frequency souls. They don't feel like they belong there. They've probably had experienced lifetimes in other dimensions and in other worlds. And this is not a place that he really felt comfortable in ever. And so what it actually said in the book was like a stranger in a strange land. And then that strange companions in a strange places came up for him. So that was amazing confirmation of that. I was really drawn to that, looking that up in the book. So that just confirmed to me that was really where I like to get that validation from them when I'm doing a channeling and connecting with them about bringing forward the proper things in their readings for the viewers, being true to what he wants to convey, not what I feel is important. This is all about what Michael wants you to know. And so he did not felt like he fit in. It stems from being, believe it or not, what it said in the book was that it stems from being made overly responsible at too young of an age. So that just definitely rings true. So because this number is tied to the sexual expression, this was an issue for Michael, and he wants you to know the truth about that is reflected in a lot of his songs about the compulsive desires, and talks about sexual abuse and doing wrong. And I'm not going anywhere about saying what he did or what I think. There was some both ways. I think that he experienced it, and he may have dabbled in that as well. So again, this is not about condemning or saying what someone did or who it was. That's not what this video is all about. But he does want you to know, to mention the songs In the Closet, I'm Bad, Smooth Criminal, and then a song came out after he died that he had written quite a while ago for the Bad album that was never published, and it was about, do you know where your children are? And it was originally titled 12 O'Clock, which is all about the time element. Again, symbolism, this deep distortion for him that was created through his trauma. And so that's all I want to say about it. Again, it is all about us learning these lessons, the two in his physical challenges, about him learning great wisdom from all of these experiences. So we can judge him, or we can embrace him for everything he had to offer, love him for everything that he did, and forgive him just like we should anyone for anything that we would consider a mistake. Although I don't believe there are any mistakes. I think there are only lessons, because we are all connected. Everything that happens to us is here to help us, and that is not to belittle what somebody has done to you or you have done to someone else. It is not about saying that wipes the slate clean or that it is okay, because it's not, but it's all about us learning to love unconditionally. And that was something that he was never given, and he never knew if anybody loved him for who he was. He would never know that with the kind of life that he chose in this incarnation. It was all about him trying to develop that from inside. And so the songs that Michael wants to share with us in the world is Man in the Mirror, and the one he wrote with Lionel Richie, which is We Are the World. I'm going to put the lyrics to those in the description box below. These are the ones he's most proud of and showcase all of the positive traits in his chart. He left an incredible legacy and body of work, and again, was a teacher of the teachers, and the fact that he inspired so many people, he catalyzed so many people into positive action, and we cannot discredit him for that. And I'd also like to mention that this chart, the way it is put together, tells me that he's very close to his last incarnation cycle. So this life purpose for him was all about gaining as much knowledge as he could, getting it all put into the cellular memory so that he can bring that forward now in his next life, because he's getting close to his last journey here. He is going to be doing a few more incarnations here, but he's going to be moving on to bigger and better things. So this was all about him absorbing as many lessons as he could and gaining as much knowledge as he is getting ready for his next big jump in ascension. I am going to pull one final card before we get into these lovely names and other numbers that I put in here, and I want to talk to you about what that's all about, what we're going to. Oh, of course, we got to pull from the spirit animal oracle. He's like, oh, forgot me with my love of animals. We got to pull from this deck, don't we, Michael? My apologies. And so this is awesome. This showcases very much a lot of his personality. This is card number 51. Of course, he's got a fives in his chart and one in his charts. And when you add up a 5 and a 1, the 6 comes in. And 6 is all about balance and harmony. And this is all about sandpiper spirit. And it's all about being playful. We're getting back to that imagery again of playing and how important it is. Have we got that message from Michael yet? He was very playful at times, and there's a lot of videos showing his humorous side and how playful he could be when he was letting himself be who he really was. And so the reason that I have his birth name here. And then he goes by the name Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson for him was also a business name. These bring in more energies from numbers. Again, you have to think of your birth name as like the cake of your life. That is our foundation that plays throughout our life. That is where our main challenges come from, our drives and our life purpose solely. But when we use another name, like he was using Michael Jackson without his middle name and using it as his business name, it does bring in another level. And I do get into this in my layover readings. When I do readings for people, we can get into depths with this. I do plan to do more videos in the future where I take a person like Michael and then we take his soul contract and the vibrations of some of his family members, which I think I'm going to do with Michael, especially with his father. And then we're going to see how they chose these, because we pick our parents. Sorry to tell you that, because I know that's not going to make a lot of you very happy. So it comes back to accountability. You create your reality here. You choose your soul family. It's all part of the game, but it also brings in some more vibrations. It's to help you to work through your numbers as well. Sometimes you can have a name change or be called a nickname, and those can either be helpful or not helpful. One of the big issues that I see from my professional perspective with a chart like Michael's, even though he manifested great wealth, was the fact he doesn't have a lot of great grounding energies. And grounding is really what helps you to stay stable in this body and earth, and really helps you to, again, where he wasn't really wanting to look at reality, it makes it much more present and clear to you. He didn't really get that either through his current name, or Michael will look at Michael Jackson as a business name. Michael Jackson, using it as your everyday name, which most of us do, we just have our first name and our last name. It brought in another 10-1, a service. Remember, that's great service soul energy, which helped him, again, build the body of knowledge through his service. The 19-1 here, so you see he's got a lot of ones. When you see a lot of the same number, it's, again, an energy that he really meant to work through, and that's tied to that divine mind, but can be very unbalanced in its expression if you're not careful. The 19 brought through that clown energy. Michael could be very much of a clown in humor, and that's tied to the energy of the 19. So that's where that was coming from, working through his heart to lighten things up with people and show the fun side of himself. So that definitely was coming through the 19. The 20-2, we see that a couple times here. That gave him, and it's here in the physical side and in the spiritual talent side. So what did that do for him? Gave him this great movement energy. This is where he could really move, and made him very flexible in his movement. Oh, it's just a wonderful energy. It also brings through this great exploration energy that he had, exploring new things and new ways of doing stuff, and not being stuck in one expression. Probably what he was missing a little bit, he said he could have been more exploring on the spiritual side and exploring more philosophies. It was very steeped in a heavier religion. His mom was a Jehovah's Witness. And again, that can play with some of this, the message of we're all connected and we're all one, and again brings in kind of this sense of judgment. And the 20-2 can be very much about warring. And if you have a lot of inner conflict going on, which Michael did, with that 3, the abuse and right and wrong, the 8 and the polarity, he had a lot of lawsuits going on, because it can manifest as warring on the outside. It can cause a lot of conflict in your life. And he did, I want to say, I read he had somewhere around 47 lawsuits. That adds up to that karmic 11. Not really, again, Venus and that love and finding the inner contentment. So sometimes these numbers can bring in a little bit more negative energy if we're not careful. The 18-9 is about, that's where a lot of his eccentric came from. That's from the 18-9. They can be very eccentric in how they dress or look, or this is all about making the hard decisions in life, following spirit without hesitation. And this would help guide him. And it also gives you this great ability to handle big projects and be able to see them from start to finish, something that Michael was very good at. We see that in that physical drives of the teacher, where he could really produce his own material and do it from start to finish. And then he has another 17-8 in his life purpose here in his current name, which adds another level of the expression we talked about. And I did forget to mention about that 8 when I said about the glove. Sometimes it was on the left hand, sometimes it was on the right. When it's on the right hand, it's about reaching out and connecting to others. When he wore the right hand, he wasn't in a place where he wanted to emotionally connect, because that's how we connect with the hand. But again, when he wore it on the left hand, that's about not really being who he really was. So it was playing a little bit in both sides there. Now, Michael Jackson as a business name is a fabulous name to have as a business name, because business names carry vibrations and energies just like our birth names do. So it's, when we go into business, we want to be very careful about the names that we choose, and we want to make sure it's in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish, and that the energies that we can manifest the energies in a positive form. And of course, he's got the 12-3, which is in his life purpose. Of course, this was part of his destiny, and 12-3s are all about expanding. If you want to be really super busy in your business, put a 12-3 in there. My daughter is in the restaurant business and she has a 12-3 in her chart. And I asked her, well, you're going to be very busy. And she has been very busy at that little restaurant she is running. And that is all tied to the 12-3. Now, the fours and abilities bring in this great business acumen about abundance and makes it very profitable and brings also this sharing component. And so that is great to have in abilities. It's all about success in business. And so he was successful, even though he carried a lot of debt and he had some things going on. All the awards, everything that he did get is extremely successful. And of course, the 10-1 in success is all about self-mastery. He wanted to be a master. He was a master. This puts him in a league all of its own, and that is definitely what he did. He is in a league all of his own in some aspects. He was a very strong spirit, and so we're going to pull one final card before we wrap this up. As I just looked at the clock, and it's 11:11, very auspicious. He's very happy with how it's going. And so then we end with the 22, the double 2. We just talked about that 4 in his business name, which adds up to 4. And again, 2 was that moon energy. And this lady is riding on a fetus, which is really tied to the 5s. And she has these beautiful wings and blessed. And it's this card again, and being in the stars. He is a star. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars on this card. Of course, there is to signify that 5. And almost like I said, it's about, again, being blessed, knowing you're blessed, feeling that blessing. And that's how we bring in more blessings via law of attraction. And this is how, again, she looks like she's part of a fetus, and that's about birthing, which that's what these 5s are in his chart. It's about birthing from the intangible to the tangible. So it's birthing ideas and making them manifest in physical form. So I love this card. This is awesome. And he's saying we all have the capacity for this. It's just a beautiful card if you can see it. It's kind of hard when I'm sharing my screen. I'm going to stop sharing right now. Hate to see Michael go. I like to have his picture up. So I thought I hit stop share, but oh, here we go. It just took a minute for it to come off the screen. I'm so grateful that Michael was here to share so much with us. I will put all the cards that I pulled in the description box below. And I may end up, like I said, doing a video with him and doing the overlays of his family and his dad and how they interacted. So I may do that in a future video as well. So thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed so much working with Michael's energy, and he is, of course, sending love to everybody around the world. Every day, he is just doing what he can for whoever he can, watching over his 3 beautiful children, which was the 3 in his life purpose. So that was part of his purpose here, was to bring those souls in as well. So he's so proud of them. And again, he is with his family. His dad, I believe, is on the other side. I'm getting that. So there's some reconciliation that's happened there. Again, when we cross over, we're still working things out. We're still learning and adjusting. Doesn't stop once we get to the other side. And so I just feel such joy around his energy, and most people did. He's changed so many lives, and that's what we want to remember him the most for. He really affected change, or so many people were so grateful for and love him for what he did for them. And we definitely want to remember him for those things and love him unconditionally. He deserves that, just as anyone does, no matter who they are. And he's also saying forgiveness is essential for everybody. Let people speak, don't judge. listen to them whether you agree with them or don't agree with them. That's his message for y'all today. So thank you again for being here. I'm sending you much love. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye and Happy New Year.